game, and nobody knew what the metric was going to be. The fact of the matter is we still do not know what that metric is going to be, and it is impossible to invest unless you know what the rules are going to be. The fact of the matter is, though, our industry is becoming much more efficient. We are becoming much more energy sensitive. Our industry is evolving in very progressive ways. In the last 5 years alone, we've reduced our energy input some 25%. We have reduced our water import almost a third. We are becoming extremely sustainable, and I believe that when all of the science is in, that ethanol will be demonstrated, produced from grain and natural gas, to meet the same sustainability standards that every other biofuel is going to have to meet. But I am confident of that. The fact of the matter is, though, we all need to work together so that there's a common understanding of what the metric is going to be to measure carbon. And our debate in the United States has been poisoned by this international indirect effects where our industry is being penalized for land use changes occurring elsewhere around the globe that are somebody else's direct effect as opposed to our indirect effect. They're not being charged with that penalty. We are, and that metric is going to hamper the continued evolution of our industry.
But
now, the Brazilians have been, I'm sorry.
No, it's a question exactly from the audience, directed exactly to what you were saying so far. The question is, it is a mistake to say that sugar ethanol from Brazil is equivalent to the corn ethanol from the US. The audience who did question says corn ethanol has shown to be less efficient and damaging to the environment. Why not let the best fuel win?
I reject completely the fact that corn ethanol is somehow damaging to the environment, for crying out loud. Look, this is an example of what we're trying to avoid on this panel, trying to demonize one another. Good ethanol and bad ethanol. I'm sorry, ethanol is all better than petroleum, and we need it all. Look, under some measurements, perhaps Brazilian ethanol will have a better carbon footprint than corn ethanol, maybe. But we don't know if that's the case because, look, we don't know what the metric is going to be. And, you know, sustainability, it includes labor, it's going to include economic impacts. Let's figure out what all that is before we jump to the conclusion that Brazil is better. I think the only conclusion that is relevant for this discussion today and that we should all be focused on is that we're all a darn tootin' lot better than petroleum. That should be our focus.
I need to support Bob on this one. We also in Europe are having this debate on indirect land use change effects, and we simply do not know what's coming out of this. Now, this again is a debate the industry is not chasing for. We are not advocating this debate because it's going to hit hard on you and it's going to hit hard on us. And the outcome could well be that biofuel should not be used at all. Now, that would be a dramatic outcome. And don't forget, there are forces out there that are trying to kill us, whether it's coming from Brazil or from any other place. And I don't need to put any tags on that. Everyone knows who's trying to stop us from producing. So don't underestimate this debate. And we are not advocating this debate.
André, please.
Very quickly, the point you just made is extremely important. I believe that the idea behind the sustainability criteria is to kill biofuels. Because what will kill biofuels best is not allowing it to be a commodity, is not creating more markets and not stimulating new producers. And that is the danger of the sustainability criteria, is that okay, you're going to say, oh, we would be welcome, like Nick very kindly said that his country would welcome biofuels from anywhere, et cetera, et cetera. But if they don't, if you create such complicated sustainability criteria like indirect land use change, which is impossible to measure, what do you keep? You keep a doubt about it. You don't have the support of the population. You don't have investment in this area. You don't have new producers. And this will never, this is going to be the usual thing. You're not going to substitute 20 producers of of oil for 1 or 2 producers of ethanol. So that's what we have to avoid. These things, unfortunately, are made to kill the market as a whole.
There is a question here, and I think there is a typical British humor in it, not only because the email address ends with UK, but is directed to all of you participants of the panel and reads like this. Can the panelists please explain what is so sexy about selling a commodity? Why is making ethanol a commodity good? And there is a point to the Brazilians as well. What could be the Brazilian ethanol industry if Brazil's fuel market was truly liberalized? Is gasoline prices, ethanol mix levels, major oil companies, if that competition will be really free in Brazil?
Well, let me take the second part of the question first, since it seems to be more directed to me. You just saw yesterday, if you were here, the president of Petrobras, who's now decided to get into this business. If he didn't, he's only here because he's realized the success of this industry. And so I think that's already an indication of the market forces at work here. There is a lot of debate about, and Bob loves to point out, says, you know, you guys don't charge all these taxes to ethanol. Let's get some things straight. Talk to Padua, who I think is here from Munich, and walk you through all the taxes in Brazil. But on average, all ethanol and gasoline are pretty much taxed about the same way. Yes, they're in some states like São Paulo, they're slightly lower. But let's be clear on one thing. We are competing against gasoline today, and we are beating gasoline. Brazil's consuming more ethanol than gasoline today, not because of some reason that gasoline is cheaper here. In fact, the reality is gasoline has not gone up in Brazil in 3 years. The mere fact that ethanol is Brazilian ethanol is so much more competitive. We mandate, yes, 25% ethanol in gasoline, but the country is consuming about 50%, twice that mandate. They're not doing that because gasoline is cheap, but because ethanol is more competitive. And what we've done that is given flexibility, not just to the industry and to the marketplace, but to consumers, that they can make that choice any day at any fuel station here in São Paulo. In fact, Nick and I were catching a cab back last night, and I pointed out to him that not only was our cab running on ethanol or gasoline, but actually halfway through he switched over to natural gas. By the way, the car did not explode, nothing happened, right? And we fundamentally believe that it is in that flexibility, it is in allowing that, and it is allowing that all these products, see, we're competing with oil as a commodity, natural gas is a commodity, gasoline's a commodity. You can't compete with those commodities if you're not a commodity, if you're not traded and you're not fungible, and I think Mike McAdams knows all about fungibility on this issue. This is one of the challenges the ethanol industry has. We have something in the United States called the blend wall, and all the other countries are running into it. It will come a point where you can only put so much ethanol in the market. And what we are focused in at Única is taking that technology and moving it further, not just in ethanol, but in other molecules that we can compete on parity with the other commodities. And that is why we're so focused on commodities.
Joel, you just hit on one of the areas where I believe we can and we must be working together, because we are indeed in the United States careening toward that blend wall. We are limited to blending only 10% in our gasoline, and we've already blended in about 8% nationwide. So we're very close to hitting that blend wall. Now, we're meeting a fair amount of resistance in the United States to trying to increase that blend wall to only 15%. Now, there's an example where we should be working together, because I've been in Brazil past several days. I've seen a lot of cars running around, particularly in this city. And you've been blending 25%. Do your cars run? We've been getting a lot of opposition from the small engine community. But I've seen lawnmowers around town. I've seen chainsaws. Do your chainsaws actually cut? Do your boats float? Because if you listen to the debate in the United States over this issue, you would think none of the above could possibly happen with anything more than 10% blends. Brazil can be extremely helpful to building the market in the United States by testifying to your experience, by demonstrating the efficacy of these higher level blends. So here's an example where we must work together. If we want to build a bigger market, if we want to lift all boats powered by ethanol, then working together to lift that blend wall in the United States has got to be a top priority.
Bob, I want to just offer you an opportunity to fix that blend wall problem, because in our association we have at least 3 or 4 companies who will not only be able to tackle your problem with the blend wall because they'll make a molecule different than ethanol and could actually make the molecule in Bob's facilities. So it would be like a computer. It's like a software package where you would plug a different yeast in or a different host organism in, and instead of making ethanol out of corn, you'd make a bioetanol, or you'd make a lovely jet fuel, or you'd make a lovely diesel. And you wouldn't have a blend wall problem, and you also wouldn't have degradation of clean air. Because if these compounds at 40 or 50% won't have any RVP, and they're totally fungible, and because they would not need to be distilled from a sustainability quotient, they would probably lower the energy input required to make the product in the first place by 25%. So we have a solution. It's coming to you in the next 3 years, and boy, do we look forward to partnership.
And I agree that that is going to happen, and we look forward to seeing those fuels in the marketplace, and indeed our member companies are likely to be some of those producers, but our issue is today, not 3 or 4 years from now. Our issue is a blend wall that is impacting our marketplace today. And if you want to have a marketplace for your member companies to blend into, we better address this one now.
And Bob, just to be clear, I mean, Bob, you say we need to cooperate, and I mean, just for the audience to know, Unica, we've said publicly, and as soon as we're working on our comments, we will submit comments to support the increase of the blend wall. I think Mike does bring up a big point in terms of this. I was surprised actually to see that a study from the University of Missouri yesterday said that the biggest beneficiary of increase in the blend wall would be Brazilians, because the imports would go up by 11% when ethanol production in the U.S. would be 4%. I'm scratching my head trying to figure out why it's so passionately important to some producers in the United States to push this issue so fast. We support this issue. As I've said, and as we say on a number of things, we think that just as the production of biofuels needs to be sustainable and sustainably done, the growth of this industry needs to be sustainably done. Let me make it clear. We are not looking in our trade association, our member companies, for just a great 2009. We are looking for a long, productive, successful, sustainable future for the world. And I realize that 2009 is very important today, but just jamming a lot of ethanol now may make our cash flow look good, but if we have problems later, we need to recognize that. And you know this issue, Bob, very well, and I know you've probably been in your industry the most pragmatic on this. And I want to make it clear that Unica supports increasing the blend wall, but we also recognize that there are challenges.
Right.
Can I
Sure.
add for the audience to understand what the issues are that are hampering the development of the European market? The debate on the blend wall in the United States I consider as a luxury debate, because we are still stuck at 5%. And why is this? Why is this? Because oil industry doesn't like ethanol at all. To give you maybe not know, but Nick made some reference to it. We in Europe like diesel engines. We like it so much that we are forced to import every year 20 million tons of Uncle Putin from Russia. And we need to ship an equal volume to the United States, to Uncle Sam, because they are short of gasoline. Now you can imagine that no single oil company in Europe does want to have 1 liter of ethanol, because every additional liter of ethanol